WESN brings back those magical mornings with Retro Saturdays.
Thus, the Powerpuff Girls were born!
Where the young at heart relive the fun. Join us every Saturday from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, only on WESN, the content capital.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
WESN.
Good morning, this is Talking Point on WESN, the content capital. Sean Michael Small here, once again from the Sister Isle to address Talking Point Nation. It's been an interesting experience. Part of it is, I'm a homebody, so the ability to see what's going on in another part of the country. Tobago is a unique separation, a unique part of the country where you can't just drive to it. Right now, we're in the middle of the August vacation. Flights are difficult. Standby flying is difficult. But there's still stuff going on from a national perspective. I spoke a lot yesterday with regards to how I was viewing the politics locally, how I was seeing the potential difficulties that the Tobago politicians might face. And again, it's not that things are necessarily going to be easy for them. There's an obvious solution. I could say, why didn't you just do this instead? But when we go to national politics, it's a bit different. Now I could say potentially, well, why did you not do this instead? Why is it that you're allowing it to be this way? All right, before I go any further, well, first of all, Ashraf should be joining me later. Don't worry. He'll be here as he is every Friday. At least he has confirmed with me. But before I go any further with the topic, let me just say, Mr. Dabity, forgive me. Forgive me, but I think there is something about how politics is being viewed right now that I actually think it requires me to make comparisons and, yes, to bring up certain negative aspects about the last PNM administration, or the Patriot Party right now to show people that I am willing to analyze both situations, right? And this is not just an attempt to bash the government. Because, and I'll kind of explain that, but there seems to be a very interesting phenomenon of people who do not necessarily understand what objectivity really means. And I think it comes with the territory. It's a pitfall when you assume your side has the moral high ground, your side can't do anything wrong. That's one of the ways you get yourself into trouble. So let me start off with the opposition. One of the things that I thought to be quite obvious was when you lose an election in that manner and you portray yourself in a certain way, you cannot then just come a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and potentially even over a year later, particularly if you didn't do the groundwork the entire time, and just act as though, well, now we have, as I did say, the opposition is the predator. But there's a but. You have to rebuild your image and rebuild the trust the public has in you, the trust in your words. And a lot of members of the opposition, I believe, don't realize how badly they hated that trust. And more importantly, don't realize how much work they need to do to rebuild it, particularly on an individual level. Because one of the things that was noticeable, even before he was made Prime Minister, in a questionable process, it was noticeable how Stuart Young's demeanor changed when he announced his state of emergency, when he was seemingly in charge of certain things, and the Prime Minister at the time, the actual Prime Minister, was absent. Of course, the assumption was then Minister Imbert, he was no longer acting Prime Minister whenever Dr. Keith Rowley went abroad because of what happened with the Auditor General thing. But you could also see it as a sign of potential, well, yeah, he's the guy, Stuart Young is the guy. And then you could have perceived that Stuart Young started to feel that he was the guy. Drink the Kool-Aid. I'm the guy. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the guy now. And then when he went on the campaign trail, a snap election he called, some people say he had to do it, some people say it was a horrible mistake. When he went on the campaign trail, a campaign trail that the first week exposed the fact they weren't ready to campaign, they weren't ready to compete. He adopted an aggressive persona that was unlike the Stuart Young, who I believe was praised the first 5 to 6 to 7, maybe even 8 years of him being an active member and seemingly one of the key linchpins of that PNM administration. And he directly, I believe, contributed to damage to his own reputation. Now people have said that everything that's been happening with the government, it's making Stuart Young look better again. But I would argue that on some level, as an individual, more so than maybe anyone else, except for those who I think they don't have a chance to rehabilitate their image, to be honest. Their image is what it is. But with regards to the young ones who have a future in politics, I'm not saying that the public was ready to cast him out, but I am saying I would have preferred for him to do more work, right? Because the opposition is seemingly wanting to take a moral high ground over issues, and the public is still remembering what happened in the 10 years they were in office, basically. But here's the thing, though. I don't necessarily think Stuart Young did the work that he needed to do. If all things being equal, he wanted to reestablish himself and regain his place in national politics. I don't think he did it. That said, And therefore, when he wants to bring up what the government is saying about oil and gas deals, there's a part of me that thinks, listen, you're coming across as you're fighting for credit. You're coming across like if you're bickering, saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. This is what we did. They didn't do it, we did it. And while that might be technically true, the perception of it can be unfavorable because I don't believe they did the work to earn back a lot of people who lost respect for Stuart Wang, to earn back that respect. But that said, the government is doing its very best to make the PNM great again. Their very best. Because while I do believe that it can be perceived when Stuart Young is talking about Mannequin Kokina and the claims that the government is making and how it's incorrect, it sounds as though to him they are taking credit because this is a new initiative when it's not. The PNM laid the groundwork. And again, that kind of sounds like you're bickering over credit. And it seems somewhat petty. I mean, it's a real thing, though, to be fair. It's a real thing where the current administration, we've seen this in the past, whoever it may be, wants to take credit for the work of the previous administration. And the opposition has to push back against it. One could argue how might not be the best way. But it is a real thing. And because it's a real thing, you can't fully blame Stuart Young for saying it. You can't tell him, no. It's too soon. You need to stay in the background and work on yourself a bit more. You can't. Because you're giving him a relevant issue to push back against, to combat the government with. An issue that he only has because the government is not careful with how it communicates things and potentially is trying to take credit for something that they were not fully responsible for. Because we have actually seen that in the past. Because I've said before, don't take credit for things that were finalized within your first few months when we know those projects did not take only 1 or 2 months. And the thing is, there's another side to it as well. I understand the PNM was voted out for a reason. I say it all the time. People, we need to stop necessarily trying to keep blaming the PNM for things. They lost the election. That was the consequences for their actions. If you're going to try to continue to convince the public to browbeat the PNM in this manner and try to include things that the PNM cannot be responsible for, the public is going to eventually pick up on that and turn on you. But even more than that, we acknowledge that the PNM had issues. We acknowledge they did bad things. We acknowledge they made poor decisions in a lot of areas. The easy thing to do is to assume the PNM is the worst. The problem is, if you use the same standards, arguably, at least in certain categories, the current administration comes off looking worse. Case in point, I found it very ironic and out of context. I don't think Stuart Young had any business saying this statement. But he said that the country has grown accustomed to transparency under the PNM. I have complained about the lack of transparency under the PNM. And here he comes claiming, oh, we have grown accustomed to transparency under the previous PNM administration, all the press conferences they did and all of that. I'm saying, no, that's not what transparency is. You could say a lot without saying anything at all. There were issues with communications and transparency in the PNM. There were issues. You could ask any PR professional that's worth their salt. There were major issues. there were a lot of situations where it came off worse than it needed to be, not because the situation was that bad. Some were, but some were because of failures in communication. So out of context, if you just take it for what it is, Stuart Young saying that the PNM basically was a transparent government is something that I can't agree with. And that's me being very polite. But here's the thing, here's the problem. And this is not my opinion alone. Objectively speaking, I believe any PR professional with their salt would say, on objective standards, the government is even less transparent than the PNM. Now, here's the problem. And you're not going to want to believe it because the PNM looks good in comparison. And how could they look good? Yeah, they look good in comparison. They weren't good. They were bad. From where I sit, they were bad at transparency. That doesn't mean that the current government is better automatically. That doesn't mean that the current government can't be worse. Ultimately, neither one was good enough with regards to transparency. Neither one, I use the phrase transparency can work for you, or the statement, with both parties. I started using it years ago with the PNM. And it's very difficult to say that this government is more transparent than the PNM. Their budget debate debacle, the lack of press conferences, not that the PNM's press conferences were the model of transparency, but at least they made an attempt to give us the dog and pony show. Even if they weren't being transparent, they still put the mechanisms out there, right? To try to actively say, well, you know, but we did the thing. You know, even if it was pulling the wool over our eyes, they still at least put in the effort. This government just doesn't bother. They don't bother. And here's an interesting thing that someone told me recently. This is an interesting thing. Because when I first started Talking Point, I just thought people didn't like me criticizing their side. And that's all that what it was. But now that I have had a show and had to do analysis on a daily basis almost, with regards to the politics and communications. Now I believe this is a somewhat different phenomenon, because in the past, I would criticize the PNM, I criticize the UNC, and people would not necessarily see when I criticize the other side. They would only blame me or be vexed with me when I criticize their side. But now it's different. Now it's a situation where you had a very unpopular incumbent that lost an election. So the perception for them is going to be generally negative. Obviously, their supporters will either, well, they voted for them to die hard and they will go down with the ship, or they didn't vote for them, but they don't necessarily want to bad talk their party, right? They just want to see their party transition out of that period. But the current supporters of the government is making the mistake thinking that any criticism, or at least some of them, thinking that any criticism has to be due to things like bias. Bias against the UNC, bias for the PNM, unfair bias, unreasonable bias, racism. You have to be a hater to find anything to criticize with the current administration. Here's the problem. Some of the critics, I can't say all, obviously those who are suspected to be PNM people, supported by the PNM or financed by the PNM or have ties to the PNM, yeah, those are going to be biased. But you know how you could tell the difference? They would have been the ones who didn't criticize the PNM government. So obviously, their objectivity is compromised because they're only criticizing one side. But here's the thing. Then you have people like me that criticized the PNM when they were in government and is now criticizing the UNC. And other people like me who are utilizing the same standards to judge the new situation. The same standards we used to judge the PNM, that's what we're using to judge the UNC now. And there are people who are criticizing the government because they criticized the last government, because they see things to criticize based off of their opinions, like some of the callers to my show. One I believe is clearly Mr. San Fernando. He criticized the PNM administration. He wasn't ready to give the UNC a free pass. He's not hoping the UNC failed. He didn't hope the last PNM administration failed. Failure doesn't mean losing an election. Failure means tanking the economy. Failure means runaway crime and more murders. We don't hope for that. I think for Mr. San Fernando, and to some extent for myself, there are individuals who I like in politics, and I would like to see what they would do with the responsibility. Unfortunately, they're stuck behind their party card, and it's on both sides, right? So I can't say that I would like, but I know for sure Mr. San Fernando, well, on some extent, I could say this about myself as well. It doesn't matter which party. I think for me, I'll speak for myself on this, it matters more the individuals, or the right individuals there, especially for the most important ministries. But for Satan critics, it's not about which party. We couldn't care less which party. We just want a good slate, a good cabinet. The party itself could even be bad, but if the candidates are decent and the governance is good, well, all right, whatever. You know, although granted, a bad party most likely will not have a good cabinet. To derive chicken salad from chicken you know what is not that simple, right? But the fact of the matter is, some of the criticism that government supporters, UNC supporters want to decry as being haters, and let me just reference one of the comments from yesterday, right? When you want to say things like they want this government to fail, right? Or this government is doing a great job. Who don't agree? Well, too bad. Well, the thing is, why do I have to agree? Why do I have to automatically agree with you? One of the things is I will explain why I think a situation is bad, or at least do my best to do so. If you don't understand, that could be a failure on my part. It could be a failure on your part. But that's an issue on language and comprehension, not necessarily a question on factual basis, right? Or technical arguments on the reality. But when you say, who don't agree, well, too bad, and you can't offer how you think the government is doing a great job, why you think the government is doing a great job, that just tells me that most likely you have a bias for the government. And the last part is you disagree with anyone criticizing the government because you think it's invalid, because criticisms can only come from PNM people, because the moral high ground of the government means they could do nothing wrong. And that is not useful. That is not what objectivity is, because that is predicated one way or another. It is predicated on an assumption, not on objective truth or sound logical reasoning. Because when you have critics that criticize the PNM and are now criticizing the UNC, it can't be that they're PNM people. Like myself, I spent almost, before the election, the entire life of Talking Point essentially was being a critic of the government, and to a much lesser extent, a critic of the opposition. And by the way, after the election, I continued to criticize the PNM in opposition because I found how they were carrying themselves, similar to my commentary on Stuart Young earlier. The basic principles are more or less the same. I was pointing that stuff out, after the election. Just because they lost. So I'm not necessarily going to look to start to bring up things they did in government to try to continue to browbeat them. I do bring up certain things as examples, yes. But I'm not saying, hey, the government is fine because look how the PNM did. The government is fine because look how the PNM did. Blame the PNM still for this, blame the PNM still for that. Certain things like, yes, the 1st September after the election, I didn't necessarily want to hear the former Minister of Education complaining. That kind of seemed a little too soon. But with regards to the PNM in opposition, well, they're now in opposition. So criticizing them in opposition is very relevant, right? Now we have to switch gears. We can't criticize the PNM government. All of the ills of society cannot still be maintained by a previous administration. It has been a year. You mean to tell me that the UNC is incapable of doing anything in a year? Because this is one of the things I think that the supporters don't understand. When you say things like they want the government to fail in their policies, even though they are there for little more than a year, what is the implication of that statement? The implication is, well, things are not necessarily looking great, but you're being too hard on them. But the fact of the matter is, a government is only there for 5 years. You can't waste 20% of the time. And it's not as though we're seeing the government doing a set of groundwork to enact long-term strategies. These police posts are not no long-term grand strategy. They're not. They haven't even put that much thought into it. That's why they're considering changing some of the locations. They haven't even finalized some of the locations. This is not a well thought out, well-developed plan with a lot of the issues ironed out before they present it to us. This is, in my opinion, it might not be half-baked, but it's 3/4 baked. It was not finalized. And I am now left to wonder, because in the past, both under the UNC and the PNM, when you had situations like this, when things were seemingly half-baked, it never ended well, as far as I remember. So I need to ask now, if this thing is half-baked, why, or 3/4 baked, why are you expecting me to have confidence that it's going to all work out? When someone says there has to be, or there must be, or surely they have a reason, or surely they have evidence, or surely they have the money, or surely this, or surely that, that is an assumption that the government cannot fail, will not allow itself to fail. Why are we making that assumption? To some extent, we made it under the PNM. But one of the reasons why you could have made that assumption on the PNM was not because the PNM would have always ensured that they didn't fail. It was because that's how they operated. They were highly reluctant to take any risks because they didn't want the public to be upset with them. So they avoided as much as possible. They avoided. They didn't fix everything. They just avoided the things that they couldn't necessarily fix. They avoided national security. That's what Fitzgerald Hines did. He was not present. He wasn't there. He offered us nothing. And that was a problem. Ironically, the Prime Minister is not present. Am I supposed to now have a different standard? Because the ideas being put forward, they're not great ideas. They're not. I criticized the PNM's SOE when the PNM did it. My criticisms of the SOE were what they were. When the UNC government put a similar SOE in place, the motivations behind it notwithstanding, a similar SOE in terms of no curfew, right? No restrictions, no nothing. It felt as though, oh, you don't want to upset people. You don't want to risk the economy, which is understandable, but at the same time, you're being too careful. You're being too ineffective. But, to be fair, both sets of SOEs did suppress the murder rate. But the point is, my misgivings, my criticisms, my issues were consistent from one administration to the next. And I don't know about you, but I believe that is a sign of someone trying to be objective. That is the sign of someone trying to be objective. When you're willing to criticize one party, and in a similar situation, you have similar criticisms of the next party. You're not trying to sugarcoat it. You're not trying to say, well, the standard was different for this one compared to that one. I'm not doing it. But a lot of the UNC supporters, the ones that want to actively not just disagree with me, but they want to disagree with me, and then they don't have, I need details. Why? How? Am I wrong? Why? How is the government fine? But if you give me an oversimplified shortcut of a statement, it comes across as biased. It comes across as someone that cannot be objective. Because your arguments are not, you're not offering any facts or reasoning behind your argument. You just want your argument to be. That's how it comes across. That's what you're presenting. I have no other way to interpret it. You're not adding to the conversation to make the conversation better and richer and more detailed and more complex and able to treat with more complex situations and dynamics. Because I'm fairly certain you're willing to criticize the PNM. And if you're not willing to criticize the UNC, then you can't be objective. You're being the unfair one that you want to label people like myself as. But then there's a step further. To what degree now? To what degree now? This is 2026, so we have to ask this question. Are these comments party propaganda? There's a belief that you have PNM and UNC operators on social media. That's their job. To push back against messages against their party, to advance their own party's message. But they're doing it with the veneer of being common citizens like you and me. Well, technically I'm not a common citizen, but you know what I mean. I'm not part of either party. I'm not part of parliament. I'm not a public service worker or whatever. So this situation, I think it's one where what do you really think this is, how this is going to play out? Right? Let me put it a different way. And I'll close this segment with this. I've gone longer than I wanted to, but I'll mention this. Independent Senator Anthony Vieira was speaking about the whole CCJ situation, which I have not delved into it. I don't have an opinion because I'm not informed enough, and I'm not one of those yahoos that's like, no, I'm gonna have an opinion, and I'm just gonna say whatever I think while being uninformed and ignorant to the situation. But he did say this, and I thought this was applicable to a wider conversation. He said that after 21 years of its inauguration, the court has built a substantial body of jurisprudence and credibility. Quote, one period of internal turbulence shouldn't cause us to abandon that achievement. It should cause us to protect it. The waters may presently be troubled. The answer isn't to sink the ship, but to steady it. You could find the article if you want to read more of it on what he had to say on the CCJ in, I believe, The Guardian. And I believe it would be today's Guardian. But I thought, look at what he said there. What does that say about us? we're not any more corrupt than anybody else. There's corruption in America. Both Donald Trump is complaining about it, about what the other side is doing, and the Democrats are complaining about what the Republicans and Trump are doing. The reality is you could find probably corruption on both sides of the political aisle in North America, right? Case in point, Nancy Pelosi, Dan Crenshaw, their stock trading portfolios do better than many day traders and stockbrokers, right? When I say do better, say so better that you wonder why are they in politics? They could just play the stock market and be filthy rich because that's where their wealth comes from. They're better than the professionals. One would assume they're just in government the whole time. Dan Crenshaw is a Republican, Nancy Pelosi is a Democrat. Just saying, or Nancy Pelosi's husband. Just saying, I won't get any further. Those who know about that argument or topic will know. You'll find corruption in Canada. Trudeau was basically put before some sort of ethics or privileges committee multiple times. You'll find corruption in the United Kingdom. You'll find corruption in Europe. You'll find corruption in Scandinavia. Maybe not as much as other places, but you'll find it. Obviously, you'll find corruption in China. You'll find corruption in South Korea. You'll find corruption in every country. Every civilization and society has the potential for corruption. Here's the difference. What do you do when it happens? How do you respond to it? How do you fix it? And I think this goes back, rhetorically speaking, we don't know how to maintain things in Trinidad and Tobago. Not speaking for the rest of the Caribbean or Latin America or Africa or what have you, or China. But in various ways, it's different between China and America. But in various ways, they answer this question. Now, granted, I don't think they answer it very well anymore. But the statement that Auntie Vera made, one period of turbulence shouldn't cause us to abandon the CCG. It should cause us to protect it. The answer isn't to sink the ship, but to steady it. We haven't done anything. Some countries in Africa have, some other Caribbean countries have, some Latin American countries have, right? Obviously, European countries, America, their democracies are older. They've had to put some effort into this. I argue we haven't, not really, done anything to steady the ship. In fact, what do we do politically? Whenever an entity, things are going wrong, we want to sink it. Get rid of CPEP and ERP, and get rid of this, and get rid of that, and replace it with some other thing. Get rid of TTT, and replace it with some other thing. And then when the PNM came back into power, they got rid of that thing and reopened TTT, and so on, right? We don't know how to deal with the aftermath and to correct and to course correct. We're too accustomed to this oversimplified, it's we time, it's their time, it's us versus them. It's a zero-sum game. It's not about what's best for the country, it's what's best for the party. Because one of the commenters used that phrase, it's we time now. We time, really? After I criticized that phrase without actually knowing that that comment was there. And I understand why someone is tempted to feel that way, but it comes across really badly when you think about it objectively. Because by saying it's we time, you're saying, I don't care who is going to suffer. I am going to benefit now. So the rest of y'all could suck salt. But here's the sad reality. One, for many non-PNM supporters, I don't think you're going to benefit that much. My criticism is not predicated on if PNM constituencies do well or not, just by the way. And I suspect that there will be some areas of non-PNM supporters who are going to suffer. And two, why are you so quick to draw a line yourself? When you say it's we time, can you accuse anyone from the other side, rhetorically speaking, of being the decisive one? it's we time where I don't know if you realize this. It's one of the most divisive things you could say. I mean, it falls short of outright racism, but it draws a line between you and everybody that is not you. And if that's how we want our politics to be, that's fine. We will descend into corruption, and I believe Socrates said some version of eventually we will look to elect someone who is popular, who will say they will solve all of our problems and will present themselves very well and will say they're for the people, and they'll be very popular. And then once they amass all the power, then they will reveal their true personality when it's too late and nothing can be done about it, and it'll turn into a dictatorship. That is basically, I believe, apparently Socrates said it, that is a weakness of democracy. It inevitably ends in dictatorship. And to be fair, we have seen two patterns with regards to democracy. That, or it being stubbornly maintained by people who are at least trying to not sink the ship, but to steady it. What are we trying to do? Are we trying to benefit and take advantage of a sinking ship? We don't care what happens at the end if it sinks. We want to get ours. We want to get what we think we deserve, what we're entitled to. Or is it that we want to have the good ship TNT smoothly sailing for generations to come? Which one you really want? Tell me which one you really want. You'll know whether you like it or not, the answer of the question of your own character. I'm just saying. Let's take a break. Ashraf is waiting to come join me. So we'll be right back after this.
If these walls could talk, they'd cry, "Uncle." They didn't plan to become offices or yoga studios, but they've stood by us, even when we got a little stir-crazy. For that, they deserve some thanks. They deserve Benjamin Moore.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity, from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378, or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
Your health matters, and the answers you need are just one conversation away. What's Up Doc is back for an exciting season 5, and we're bringing to you Trinidad and Tobago's leading medical professionals to discuss the issues that affect you and your family. From prevention and treatment to wellness and the latest medical technology. Get trusted advice, ask your questions, and stay informed. We also have an exciting new addition to the What's Up Doc family, our very own fitness instructor, Elena, who will provide easy, practical exercises you can implement in your daily routine. So don't miss What's Up Doc, Season 5, only on WESN, the content capital. Because when it comes to your health, knowledge is the best medicine.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1, find the style number on the tag. Step 2, match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3, search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay at home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
I'm back here on Talking Point on WSN Content Capital Show. Michael Small, joined by the one and only, soon to be retired, counting down the days closer than ever before. Technically, every appearance is closer than ever before. But now it's almost like if we could feel it. You know what I mean? We could feel it because it's not just, you know, some pie in the sky 2 years away. Soon to be retired.
Soon to be. Sean, morning. How are you? Everything is okay with you?
Everything is all right. Everything is all right. Now, a lot has happened.
Yeah.
There's still the situation with the police posts. Some of the conversation has died down. The one on Etihad grounds has its own special consideration.
Mm-hmm.
But also it came out in a very indirect manner or in a very subtle manner, not a lot of details was given, that apparently there's some amount of consideration, perhaps. We don't know how far along it is or if it's a done deal, of foreign personnel. I think it's American personnel being part of the police posts, which I find difficult to believe because I don't know if there's enough practical value getting foreign partnerships on such a on the ground level. I don't know if that's what we needed foreign partners for, as opposed to other functions.
Yeah. So the thing about it, Sean, it's not about getting the partnership. It's whether or not they have any authority to operate within Trinidad and Tobago within that capacity. Now, foreign agencies and foreign officers is not new to Trinidad and Tobago in the way that they operated. We had former Commissioner Gibbs and Iwaski. Now, the difference with Gibbs and Iwaski is that they were not foreign personnel operating on the authorities of their state in terms of British nationals or Canadian nationals or and where they came from. They were contracted to work within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, so they were no longer operating from where they are. They were operating within the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, and they were made special reserve police officers because they were operating within they have to have the legal standing to operate within the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. So there was an argument that they say, oh, it happened before. No, it didn't happen. It happened before, but there were special circumstances. The two it two is not the same. When we had SORT officers, we had British officers working in collaboration with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. They too had to be made special reserve police officers to operate within the parameters of Trinidad and Tobago, because without that authority, you do not have any authority to operate within Trinidad and Tobago with your with your state authority, your authorities coming from another country, you have to operate within the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. No, with the U.S. does in fact have personnel who collaborate with and work with local law enforcement. So it's nothing unique in that consideration. The difference is that they work in collaboration. The state leads the operation. They support the operation. You have never heard about any law enforcement state officials from outside of Trinidad and Tobago operating on their own. They cannot, because they don't have the authority. And it is similar to what the situation that took place in Barbados. They did not go to Barbados and get the assistance of the Barbadian police officers to act and take the appropriate measures in terms of the arrest and execution of warrants and whatever it is, because they have the authority. Trinidad police do have the authority to go into Barbados and operate that way. So that is the same principle, right? So I cannot see if people how it has been mentioned, and I don't think that is what people that is what people may be looking at, that we having U.S. soldiers on the ground in their view, like working with police and our defense force officers. But it is not like that. It may be that they are lending support, lending intelligence and other things behind the scenes, like they are accustomed doing and sharing of intelligence, but they're not operational on the ground, because in order to do that, you have to have special authority, and the government has to provide something, and the commissioner has to provide the special authority for them. It has to be passed in Parliament for those special authorities.
But now thinking about it, I think I could see a situation where you might get, and I believe that this kind of probably happened before, right? You might get certain specialized officers from maybe the DEA or the ATF maybe involved in an operation, right? I don't know if necessarily they'll be in the field, so it might be an advisory, right? So now the question is, will you have things like that with police posts? But then the police posts, they have the label. I found this interesting, that they're trying to use the public safety label. So to what degree does that matter if you're speaking about anti-crime initiatives? Because public safety to me implies something more static, day-to-day, to deal with the everyday stuff, not to deal with, okay, we're going to put a post, and the post is going to be strategically located next to the drug lord's house, and we're going to do surveillance and do operations against the drug lords and the gangs because we're right there. You know, like, we have a forward operating base next to their territory, so we can start to do operations. It doesn't come across like that. It comes across like, no, we're going to have police presence in communities as a public safety measure. So I'm still trying to figure out, like, why would you even need foreign personnel in that situation? I understand you might want foreign advisors, or even there's implications if you need foreign operators, foreign shooters, and foreign law enforcement personnel to do the breaching, to go after transnational criminals, right? So
even in that context, John, we're talking about shooting and breaching and going after in operations like that. They have no authority. They have no authority to operate in that capacity. So yes, they may be providing the support in terms of information, intelligence, advice, experience in their area. But when it comes to operationalizing, if they have to do any level of operationalization, they have to work directly with and get special permission to operate within the jurisdiction of Trinidad and Tobago. And I do not see that being realistic, because I don't see that is the context in which they're saying that I believe foreign assistance will be utilized. We already have foreign assistance,
right?
In terms of advice and intelligence being shared among our agencies. However, the design of a police, what these police posts, and the intention before, where persons was talking about, where it was mentioned that these posts were mobile police posts. The context of a mobile police post, or where we are staying now, is two different things. Yes, it's mobile. It's mobile. It means that it can be removed and carried to another location and reinstall and install. So that mobility do happen overnight. But when we look at mobile, we talk about with a vehicle that can be moved immediately from one point to another. This doesn't fall in that category. These posts, and we have a situation in currently in Trinidad and Tobago police service where we had a number of posts over the years. So the posts are not unique to Trinidad and Tobago, right? There are a number of our stations that were initially set up for posts because they wanted to have simpler, easier access to the public, more presence in the area. So we had things like when Maloney Housing Development came in, they were placing a police post for that purpose. Nowadays at Maloney, there's no longer Maloney Post anymore. It's a police station. It's a actual. The entire infrastructure has been re-established in what the core functions, what it would be now. Now it's a complete police station. Same thing when we have Pinto Post, we have Londonville Post, we have St. Barb Post, and we have posts in Tobago that were posts initially because of the fact that was for outreach to the community and make sure you have exposure to the community. Now they have fixed locations with police posts. Now, here's the challenge you're going to face with this now. We are talking about, and I don't expect 30 posts to be built overnight. It's over a period of time. Right? So this might be the first phase to put in certain posts in strategic locations, and over the period of time, over a couple of months, we might end up getting the rest of the posts being built. And based on the fact that how fast these posts are being assembled and put together, I think it's a very short space of time for them to put in the turtles. Now, let's look at one particular post that is almost ready, the one at Grand Bazaar interchange. Here's the challenge from a logistical perspective. You have a police post that is now being told, the public is being told, that the public can come to that location and make a report. That is similar to a police station. So once persons make reports to the officers, because at the end of the day, you must have police officers. Note, I am not saying defense force officers, I am saying police officers to be stationed there 24/7 to ensure that if someone has a report to make, someone is there to take that report. So that is talking about, let's say one officer per shift to take reports. That's two officers you must have on a 24-hour basis. I do not know, even 24, if they choose to use 12-hour shifts, if they're making different shift, 8-hour shift, it all depends. 8 hours mean like 3 officers. We're talking about more officers as we go longer. You cannot put 24 hours because it is unrealistic to have officers working at 24 hours because the area is not. I don't think the area is that those posts are designed for 24-hour shift personnel, maybe for a shorter period to rotate. But the more rotation you have, more rotation means more personnel, right? And so the logistics has to be worked out realistically. No, there's basic maps when it comes to establishing a police post and maintaining operationability of the police post to ensure that it is serving the best interest of the public, but that is what it's supposed to do. So when you're talking about that, we talk about one vehicle. Let's add in one vehicle to our police post. That is one vehicle for them. At least 2 personnel per shift. If you have 2 shifts, that is 4. So that is 8 persons. That is basically a minimum of 8 persons, 2 patrolling, 2 maintaining inside, because there's a particular administrative structure within the organization that one police officer cannot patrol by himself in a vehicle. That is part of the standing orders.
Well, yeah.
Whether we agree or disagree with it, we are not like the foreign police where one officer could patrol by himself. No. And then there's a risk associated with leaving one police officer at his post based on location of the post. So you have to have 2 police officers. So that's 2 and 2, that's 4 with the rotation. So when you look at the numbers is going to add up. The numbers is going to add up when you have 50 posts, right? No, we haven't considered the other aspects of this, where you would have officers may be absent for emergency purposes. Officer may take a sick leave because it's on a night. He or she may not be able to come to work. No, it means that once that happens, in order for the post to maintain its operationability, you have to take police officers from the police station and send them to the post. So now you are taking that, you're reducing the strength of a police station and sending them to that post, because you said there's no additional manpower to come from anywhere. It's just reshuffling the manpower on a regular basis. And we all know where the public concern is that when they go to stations, they never have police officers, they never have this and never have that. That is the reality with what we have with our stations right now, because we have a manpower shortage. This is now going to add to the manpower shortages when you have to reassign personnel to ensure that they get the effectiveness of the post.
Well, here's the thing, because so you've said there have been posts before. I am speculating on, I think this was some of these posts, because apparently the Tunapuna Piarco Regional Corporation was speaking to whoever about having a police post a different part of the Etihad grounds, right? Yeah. So when the minister says they should have known about this, the chairman is like, yeah, well, we knew about a post, but it wasn't this post, right? All of a sudden the plans were switched on us, right? And I am starting to get the sense that the police or somebody had a plan, hey, let's add a few more posts to help public safety. And then the government got wind of it and said, yes, let's do that. In fact, let's do 30. And they couldn't even figure out 30 locations yet, but they want to announce it. So they got 26 or 24, and they announced it. And it's a public safety measure. And the thing is, the amount, the manpower shortage, because of the amount they want to implement in a short time, it makes me wonder. Because when you said how certain police stations used to be posts, I'm thinking, do people realize, yes, they want a police presence, but now that station has to be maintained. Now these posts have to be maintained, so that's more ongoing cost. Could we have maybe used that money on more vehicles if the system of patrols was superior, as opposed to having more fixed locations that also have to be maintained, but they're fixed, which means that, like as you say, they have to be manned. But then speaking to the media ambassadors, he said, SP Arun said something I found interesting, and I kind of understand why you might want to have this in place, but the question is, did you necessarily acknowledge the negatives of it? The posts don't have a large area of responsibility, and they wanted to ensure that there's a asset to respond to things in whatever area the post is responsible for. So as you said, it's not just the people in the post, but probably at least one more vehicle, right? With at least 2 more officers. And even if you have the army to help, your figures are not going to drop, because you can't replace police with the army. It has to be in conjunction with, right? So you can have army in the patrols, but you still need 1 to 2 officers in the patrol as well. And my thing is, and I guess at the risk of giving too much away, but I think the criminals will figure this out too sweet anyway, if they haven't already. It's almost like if we're setting up a zone defense. And in sports, a zone defense is, you have a zone, you're responsible for the zone, you're stuck to your zone for the most part, right? If you leave your zone, you run the risk of then someone exploiting you not being in your zone. So as you say, you have to have people at the post ready to respond. Well, how do you defeat a zone? You either avoid the zone, you find the spots in between the zone, or you overload a zone. And for the most part, I think people weren't necessarily saying it on those terms, but you and others, I believe, or if not you, others were saying, well, they'll just go where the posts are not and conduct crime elsewhere.
So there's the issue with the strategic locations makes logical sense from a data from data analysis.
Okay.
Because we're talking about, and I'm using the interchange, Grand Bazaar interchange, just for discussion because as one of the, as well as the one in Turuba at the same time. Strategically, it is located because it's a high impact traveling location. A lot of vehicles traverse there on a regular basis. So it's an intersection where we have east, west, north, and south interacting with each other on a daily basis, right? So from a strategic and analysis perspective, when you have a high traffic area there, it gives an opportunity in the event there is an incident where we have, let's say, there's a response needed for someone who is utilizing the highways to who committed a crime and utilizing the highway. Yet there's the expectation that you will have a greater response time in those locations to assist the other responding units. So from that perspective, it makes logical sense because you're getting you expect to have a greater response time for officers going there. That argument can also be countered with the fact that you don't need a post, you just need a unit to remain there. I can understand that argument, right? But there's the other context in which you're saying that the police post also serves as a location where persons can come and report crimes that took place. There lies the challenge. Because when you have an area of that, when you create an environment or set that parameter, it means that it is no longer a police post. It falls within the category of a police station where reports are to be entertained, chronicalized, and in some instances may have to be investigated by the officer, so that in context it can defeat the purpose of a post for faster response when you have officers doing investigative work, where a police station is designed for that. Now, we have an open door policy in Trinidad and Tobago when it comes to anybody could go in any police station. Good, and it is established. So if it is that someone is going to a police post, it means now that the public has access to the police at more locations than necessary. So let's hypothetically put this in the place. Do you think that anybody in the Valsin 1, 2, and 3 area would be going to the St. Joseph police station if a report is to be made within that area? They will be bombarded with all the reports from within that catchment area. You're coming from the east, an accident occurred. Where's the closest police post? At the Grand Bazaar interchange. You will be bombarded with reports of accidents where persons will go there, and it goes vice versa. So could these, no, if the officers redirect the public to the police station, let's say redirect them to St. Joseph police station or the appropriate police station, they are now contravening the open door policy and could be subjected to disciplinary action. No, the public is going to.
Also, the public was told you could make reports there.
And so the public will say you are contradicting what the Minister of Homeland Security is indicating and what the police service is establishing. So these are some of the challenges you're going to face when we have this. When you have mobile units, or I should say patrolling units or vehicle stations on the roads, it's similar in that context, because anybody could stop a police officer who in a vehicle and make a report. The public doesn't have to go to a police station anymore. We don't understand that,
Right.
The police officer has a responsibility to take all the information, and when he goes back to the station, report off with all that information, he is responsible now to making all the relevant entries and everything like that in the diary.
Well, this is why I thought that Gary was speaking to more important issues along the same lines when he said response times and things like that, right? Because I'm like, why is it that we have to go to a station, especially if it's a public safety thing and you're concerned about violent crime? So I have to be the victim of a violent crime or observe a violent crime and sneak away to make a report to get assistance. It should be, I call, the response apparatus works, police come, and they, whether they encounter the criminals or the criminals escape, and I'm calling to get us. Why do I have to? I am a victim now. The criminals are gone. I have to leave my house and go to a station to make a. What if I don't have a car? What if they took my car? I don't have a car, right? So in my mind, I'm like, why do we need more fixed points to make reports? Because in theory, if I have to go in for whatever reason to do paperwork or whatever, I could just go into the full service station that already exists. So
you see, our policing model is not it's policing at the station. So the public must come to the police as opposed to the police going to them. That's the model we keep using. So every time you put a facility in place, a police force, you expect the public to come to you, not vice versa. The context is that you're supposed to be able to have more access to the public, so you'll be able to go to the public more, and the public have access to you. But let's be real, you're not getting the way our structure is, and it doesn't happen now. It has been there for a number of years that you have to, you're not able to go to the public because why? Somebody called for assistance. Getting to leave the police station is challenging by itself because you don't have a vehicle. Reality is, and anybody could argue with me otherwise, and I could say I could justify my statement. Sometimes you don't have you have a catchment area where you have one or two vehicles attached to that station that has to serve a greater catchment area. One vehicle is already in. One vehicle and the officers are already engaged in dealing with a report. I'm not talking about the argument where people will come and say, hey, when the police officer going to get lunch and all that. Let me leave that to some other discussion. Right? We're talking about responsible policing we're talking about here. You have a vehicle, two officers in a vehicle dealing with a report on one side of your catchment area. And there's a response, there's a call for another on another area. When you look at it, that vehicle might be that they may be dealing with this situation, and their response time to another location will be short-lived because they may not be able to leave the location that they are dealing with the report anytime matter, because you can't go by by someone who is making a report based on nature of the report. Say, listen, I have got too short here right now because I have to leave and go to another location. Some other unit has to take up that responsibility. If you don't have a vehicle and additional units for that response, the public is continue to, that's why the public is say, they normally say that our response time is for in certain areas because you have to wait a number of things. In what this was supposed to, and I say I like the idea of having the police force in strategic locations to increase the response time, but the response time must be, and you must have the appropriate amount of resources at these locations, not minimal resources we're talking about. We're talking about response teams, response units. Let's say 3 or 4 vehicles attached to that area. So we could have officers in and around patrolling the entire area. So the public will feel the presence. 2 officers alone in that area is not going to help the public feel more safer that we have a police force there. You understand? So you have to look at it from a different.
I feel also that how rigid is responsibilities and command structures, because I almost feel as though, well, these are the number of officers in this station, and I'm like, why isn't it that they can't be like a separate unit that basically has a wider scope that will respond as a secondary measure in that, all right, this station is empty. So now we could start to try to get responding units from a reserve that will have a wider scope or something like that. Because yes, certain area, I understand the idea for police posts because Mr. Sanfernando called in and he was speaking about the need for maybe more highway patrol units for the highway, right? And I'm like, that could be effective, but you would probably, ironically, need police posts on the Eastern Main Road to ensure that you could get a timely response at various strategic points on the Eastern Main Road, because you can't drive as freely, you can't move as quickly on the main road as you can on the highway, right? So you might need maybe posts on the main road to give you, as you say, strategic locations where you could help with your response times and not try to go from one end to the other end through traffic. That'll make sense. So I don't know if maybe the structure of the patrols, because it's like military theory. You don't commit all of your stuff to the front line, so you have no reserve in case of an eventuality. And the eventuality would be, well, what if one police station just has a high number of situations, incidents to respond to tonight, right?
You see, this is where we come down to effective management of the resources. Now, when you have, and the public keep using the word, I want police post, I want a police post, I want a police post. It is not a police post in my perspective. It's police presence that you're longing for. You do not need a police post, a fixed location that have police presence. It's about having the maximum amount of resources for that purpose. I can tell you that when I was working, that's a number of years ago, I was working E999 response. And on a nightly basis, we may only be limited, this is the context in which I am putting it. Before you had the additional division, which is Northern and North Central, that was broken up, the additional division for more effective use of manpower and supervision, you had Northern Division. And Northern Division previously was from St. Joseph to Arima, all the way up to Komoto, San Rafael, Piaco. That was where the whole Northern Division was concerned. We had at least 3 units operating within the 3 areas. One in, we call it North, Central, and North, West, and Central. So Central would be Aruca, Piaco, Maloney. North would be up in East would have been up in Arima, Pinto, all of there, and then West would have been Tunapuna, St. Joseph. So you had 3 vehicles, 3 units operating within that space. However, just look at when you have 3 units, but 1 unit is responsible for a catchment area from Maracas, St. Joseph District, Tunapuna District, and St. Joseph District. These are high residential areas that you are dealing with. So you have a vehicle, 1 vehicle with 2 officers who are servicing this area, and any calls come to that area, within that area, you are there, you are required to respond, but you are based there for the entire tour of your duty, which means that you must stay in that catchment area throughout your tour. So anything that happens within that area, then you have your shorter response time, because if it is that you have to come from Arima to St. Joseph because there's no other vehicle, your response time will be lengthened because you have a larger distance to operate from. The same principle has to operate here. It is not about a police post alone. This police post is also serving as a way that the public can interact with the public can interact with the police, and the police can reach the public faster or have more interaction. So this is the context. The context is to get there, how the public interact more. But when you talk about response time cannot be 1 vehicle. It has to have more manpower. So it makes more logical sense when we had Mr. Gibbs, and even when Gary Griffith, and even presently when you have Mr. McDonald Jacob, former Deputy Commissioner, Mr. McDonald, who is talking about the active directive patrol, which is based on data. It's happening in Tobago. But you know what the whole context behind this, what is supporting that mechanism? It's maximizing manpower and having the appropriate manpower and the resources for response. So if you don't have the vehicles, you don't have the manpower, it's not going to serve the purpose. So that's what I'm saying. Yes, you can put the post. The post is irrelevant in the context of where you put a post, because they're talking about presence. The public wants presence. And right? And you remember you're talking about you're driving on the highway. When you drive on the highway, you're supposed to see police, highway patrol vehicles placed at strategic locations along the highway, right? But here's the thing that we have to do, and I just want to bring this out also. The public has a perception, together with the police who supports that perception, that if a police vehicle with 2 officers are parked at a particular location, that they are not functional, that they should not be there, right? If the 2 police officers are sitting in a vehicle having something to eat, the first thing you get is a picture on social media. Look, the police hungry, they're eating in a vehicle, and we support that. We want police presence, but they picking on the minor issues where our officer has to have something to eat. If the officer needs to get something to eat or get something to drink, that shouldn't take away from the response time.
You know what it is? You know what it is? Because I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but this is a customer service gripe of mine. You in your job will be talking to a customer. When I say you, not you, but rhetorically speaking, whatever trainee that has a job or Tobagonian that has a job to interact with customers, right? And you'll be talking to a customer. And some workers, some customer service workers get irate because it's like, why you don't understand? It's not that simple. I can't just do this for you because blah. Meanwhile, the customer doesn't understand because they don't know what your processes are. But you as a worker understand, hey, the processes are more complex than what the public knows, right? Or you think the public should know, but they don't know. But the point is you are defensive because in your mind, my work is complex. There are challenges. It's not so straightforward. And then you go off your job on your free time to be a customer somewhere else. And you act like the same customer you was annoyed with because you are not willing to put yourself in their shoes to say, well, maybe it's like my job where they now, when dealing with me as their customer, has some sort of complexity or challenge that they have to deal with. And then now with what you're saying, it goes a step further. It's almost like if we want the people providing a service, well, they're not human when they're on the clock. I am a human when I'm on the clock, and I can make human mistakes when I'm on the clock. And I could have human needs when I'm on the clock. But other people cannot have human needs when they're on the clock. So how dare officers in an 8-hour to 12-hour shift need something to eat? Because they're not supposed to need something to eat. They're officers. When they come off the clock, then they're humans. It's like, it don't work both ways. You cannot want people to understand you're only human, but then you can't understand, for better or worse, officers are only human. And if we don't understand that, our expectations are too ridiculous, and it will never be enough, and we will always be irate. And then the officers will basically say, well, these people are unreasonable, so why do we bother trying to listen to them?
And then you have the internal administration issues. And I always say that you cannot try to explain to the public the challenges that you're facing because that is not their concern. You are here to provide the services that they require. All your issues that you have is irrelevant to them in terms of what they want. So you have to operate within that. You have to operate within that capacity, understanding and listen. If there's we have shortfalls, you're not going to try to ensure that the public knows all the shortfalls and that they can't carry out your function. You have to carry out the function that you are supposed to, because it's basically customer service at the United States time.
So one of the things, and again, as you say, it's resource allocation. So of course, I feel as though, and you said it best. Gibbs and Iwaski tried to do it. Gary, to some degree, tried to do it. McDonald Jacobs probably tried to do it. And the inertia, the institutional inertia, we don't want to change. And it's like, well, guys, if and the public seemingly are more than fine with, well, we just want presence. But it's like, well, we get more of the same. We're not seeing improvement or innovation. Why are we just settling for this? But there's a different flip side, because I feel as though the human resource usage, the government could say they want 2,000 plus new officers. That's not going to immediately just increase the manpower of the force, because they're all going to be rookies. And they're going to have officers that need to be with the Army and officers that need to be with rookies. So you have a slew of senior officers now that basically, the oversimplified way to put it is they have to chaperone people who are not experienced police officers, whether they're Army or new graduates. That's another level, duty or responsibility, which apparently you want to scale up in large numbers if you want so many new recruits and the Army to work side by side. But then there's the financial. Then there's the financial stuff, and I'm not saying don't pay for the posts. I have gone on the record, I think 2 budgets now, saying I don't have a problem sacrificing for more money for national security. It's just that don't pinch pennies and say we can't afford body cameras, and then you do this. Give out the money to buy all of it. Buy more vehicles for more patrols if you want more presence, especially for the North Coast. You don't want to have to try to get backup responding from Maraval to go to Maracas, right? But listen, if it is an emergency now, a government level plan is figuring out a way to finesse the budget, to get the resources, to get all the things, and to maintain all the things that are needed.
Well, using defense forces is a plus, but there are lots of logistical challenges with utilizing the defense force, because, like I said previously, we have the issues with how their working hours. Something so simple that people don't that they'll take for granted. The defense force, once they're on duty, they are provided with meals.
Right.
That is part of that is their responsibility. They are provided with meals. That is part and parcel of their contractual arrangement. So the defense force and all have some logistical challenges, because when you have number of posts along these areas, meals have to be placed, have to be sent to the soldiers, have to be brought for the soldiers at a particular time for them to have their sustenance. Right? No, they can't work like how police officers work. Police officers don't have a lunch time. Right? Yes, we don't have a lunch time to say, hey, we're closing for 1 hour lunch, or send this one or send that one for lunch. If you're on a report, you have to deal with the report, and when you finish, you grab something to eat. Right? Sometimes you go and if you don't have a breakfast, well then, hey, it's dinner when you go back home, so that's it. Or you eat some later, some other time when you get an opportunity to eat, or get something some sort of meals to eat when you get that opportunity. So it's not fixed for the police. So yes, internally the police understand that. Listen, we know how our arrangements are, how we could get, when we could get and when we can't get, but it is not the same for the defense force. Remember, they have a fixed time. They have a fixed time to get their particular meals, because they have to cater the meals, bring it to the location. So you have to work with that logistics. So then, let's be human. Could you tell the soldiers, they say, well, they can't get enough eat, just all they work, all they eat when we like with us. That is a whole administrative problem for them, a logistical challenge for them.
Then there's also, there's also other issues with logistics and the defense force. You know, also the prison service as well. But we won't get into that.
Yeah, we won't get into I'm just showing you, this is not as simple as just putting a post and say, hey, we put in police officers to work there. In order for it to be effective and for us to achieve the results that we need, or what it was the results that we're looking for, everybody has to be able to willing to make sacrifices for this in the bigger interest of national security, right? Both financially and otherwise. The public has to accept certain things taking place. Because when you listen to somebody, when you see somebody's social media videos and all kind of things, when the police officers who are asking for presence stop a person on the street and ask you something simple for a driver's permit and insurance, the first thing is actually, what are you harassing me for? Why I don't go and catch a criminal?
So is that we have a caller. So before don't get rolling, we have a caller. Dabadi on the line. Dabadi, good morning.
Sure morning and congratulations to the ASP. Sorry that he's leaving now, but I am in concurrence with everything he has said. Every single thing he has said, and the police service is not new to post. I think even before the ASP joined the work, there was a GB South, and that was a post that we set up in Crossing under one of the ASP. I don't remember his name right now, not Rajbal. However, everything he's saying is correct, and the police is quite aware as to the operations that should take place. I want to say, first of all, the strength at each of these posts should nothing be less than 1 sergeant, 2 corporal, and about 6 constables. And I don't know how you will rotate that as far as the shift is concerned. So you have serious problems there. I agree with him with the amount of resources that you will need and the problems that you will incur with people coming in to make reports there and has to be dealt with emergency. Yes, you could direct them to the nearest station as the case might be, but there are instances when they will have to act on it as an emergency. You wouldn't have that time. So the logistics, I cannot see how it will work, but I am always in support of the police, and I wish them well. I think that the member of parliament and the minister should have consulted more with some of these senior officers, although he's quite aware of it. But you should have consulted more with some of the officers and them to know exactly what would be needed. Because many times, if you have people sicking out, if you have people on vacation, if you have persons for some reason coming to work late, you will have problems. And what I am foreseeing is that the overtime is going to escalate immensely. Your second division officers will be claiming overtime, and based on what the association is asking is that overtime should be paid either on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, or probably every quarter as soon as practicable. So I don't know if in this budget coming up in 2026, 2027, if the ministry had actually put that in their expenses for the year coming up. Sure, it's going to be problematic, but I really wish the best, and I am looking forward to a reduction in crime, but it will not be easy. Thanks for the opportunity and wonderful program as usual. ASP, bon voyage on your retirement, and I hope that you make good use of it.
Thank you very much.
He still has a little bit of time. So let's not. Next thing you know, he gets a letter in the mail. You have been reactivated. It can still happen, right? Technically.
Possibility.
Possibly. I mean, the question is, do they have the budget for that?
And the caller was right, because I didn't want him to go there because of the fact that when I said financial issues, when you have additional hours, we're talking about overtime. There was already a lot of media outcry and parliamentary debate, a lot of issues when it comes to the amount of overtime currently existing in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, where you have billions of dollars in overtime. Now that you're talking about additional hours, because let's be real, overtime will fall part of the part and parcel of the situation, because officers, you cannot get officers working the exact amount of hours because of a lot of issues. There are persons who may remain longer than some because of emergencies or certain situations, and overtime will be part of it. So you will have to cater for the additional overtime too. So that is also going to be part of the financial situation in funding some of these programs.
Well, consider this. Consider the situation with the nurses. And again, this is one of those examples to kind of continue a little bit from what I was saying before you came on, where it wasn't just because the government changed that the Nursing Association all of a sudden kicked up a fuss. They were complaining about certain things under the PNM, and it wasn't necessarily about the rate of pay. It was a lot of little things. Some of it was certain allowances and the like, but part of it was the fact that they were understaffed. And because they were understaffed, there was a lot of overtime. Now, technically, it's not a member of the cabinet, but if we listen to Dr. Gopi Singh, the overtime is a problem. Well, yeah, we know it's high. We expect it to be high because the Nursing Association has complained about being understaffed. So you're vilifying them for having too much overtime, saying it's a racket. And the thing is, I think, look, it's easy to say, oh, there's too much overtime with the police. Yeah, but if you're demanding a certain amount of hours, of manpower hours, and the math does not math without overtime, the number is going to balloon. And I could easily see where the politicians are not actually going to understand, put in the time to say, what does the math say on the overtime bill? Right?
So just for those persons who just have to jump up on the bandwagon of overtime, let me just give them a simple explanation. If you're working at 8 and finishing at 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., good? At 8 p.m., this is not like another business, a normal business, that you can lock the doors and go about your business and say, hey, listen, you have responsibility, what they call with the responsibility, and these persons have a responsibility to do what they call a handover. Somebody has a handover responsibility for the facility, the manpower. So it takes some time. So if someone reaches the work late for some reason, some emergency situation, that the relieving officer reaches work late, and the officer should have to remain there about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock during the everyday. That basically means that I cannot leave my post by 8 o'clock because I have to wait for my relief. And when I'm talking about relief, there's a structure in place how a proper relief is taking place, how a proper relief will take place. We're talking about accountability. We're talking about ensuring that everything is handed over. Somebody has to sign for something to account for the other person. When the other person, everything has to be put. That's a simple process. But at the same time, it's a serious process, right? And the additional hours that you are still on duty, because you are still on duty until such time as you get properly relieved. So automatically, I have just accumulated 2 additional hours of overtime. Extrapolate that over a monthly period where I might have about 10 or 15 extra hours, 20 extra hours. That's how it works out. No, this whole thing about accountability and accountability resources, we have a challenge. We have an issue already coming up in the Central Police Station in the Port of Spain Division, where 7 police officers was arrested because of the issues with firearms. I'm not making allegations or whatever it is, but we're talking about missing firearms again. No, here's my problem. You shift the burden from the municipal police and brought the same firearm issue into the police service. So police officers have to account for it. Why the municipal police didn't account for their own firearms, that the case should have been accounting for their own firearms. If you are responsible for getting firearms, whether the situation happened in San Fernando, then I do not think it was a responsible decision to take all firearms from the municipal locations and send them back to the police service. That's just me. It just all he just did is take away that responsibility that they're supposed to have and put it back on the police service. Now you have an issue now where 7 police officers have been detained on an investigation for missing firearms. Why? You're shifting the burden. I am saying when the responsibility, if the responsibility is yours, you answer the responsibilities.
We have San Fernando. We have San Fernando line, and we have to wrap up. So we'll take a call quick, and then I'll let you get the last word in. But San Fernando, morning.
Good morning, Sean. Morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning.
You know my position on this post, Sean. I disagree with it, right? However, I am not opposed to something that's trying to help with dealing with crime. I think the approach, what I'm hearing from a lot of people about these posts, I think is the wrong approach. These posts should not be considered in my opinion, as another mini police station for people to go and make reports. I imagine that these things should be like a staging area. A staging area for officers out of the station to patrol and be present outside of the normal areas. For instance, in Mr. Ali, they put in a post in Taruba on top of the flyover there. In the vicinity of Taruba, you have Marbella Police Station, you have Monipo Police Station, you have St. Madeleine Police Station, you have Gasparillo Police Station, surrounding that in close proximity. Nobody should be going in this post to make a report. This is what I think we're going back to. We're looking at things in retrospect rather than thinking futuristic. And I don't think that old way of this is a post here and people can come and make reports. That is not what that post should be, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about that. Have a good weekend, gentlemen.
All right. All I'll say quick, Ashraf, is that I thought that somebody within the police potentially had a project, and the project, they knew what it was for, and it was realistic, the expectations placed on it, and then potentially the government came and expanded the project, and what they are trying to make it out to be, this big grand strategy, that's not what it was the original intention. That's not what it was meant to do. And I fear that, you might get these kind of weird situations, like what Mr. Sanders is calling out, where some posts you're like, do we really need this post? Do we really need a post here to have a patrol or a presence here? Is it practical enough? Some areas might need staging area, that's fine, right? But it seems like we kind of expand. It's mission creep on an initiative that might have been at a smaller scale that would have been more manageable and more practical. And now, no, it's mission creep. So we're because we need a political win. That's just my thoughts on it. But we have maybe just 2 minutes and then we have to go.
Well, Sean, I think it's a good initiative, not the fixed location, but the strategic locations for increased police presence. Putting the fixed locations has its challenges logistically, and it's gonna weigh a lot on the manpower resources and operational ability of it if it don't have the appropriate manpower and the resources and the additional resources to give the public the sense of security that is intended. right? We have to change our mindset as to how we operate in, because if you have to, if every time you have to make a report, you're saying you want to go to the closest police station, and the closest police station is right outside their door, because that's how the communities want. Everybody wants a police station or a police post right outside their door.
Yeah, no, wait, no, they don't, because then they don't want the police to harass them. Just say it.
Well, yeah, but they keep on calling, and communities want to come in. And I'm saying that it doesn't, if your report, and I'm just saying, if your report is such that you have to go to a police station, you go to the nearest police station. If the nearest police station is a mile away, hey, go a mile away. But we keep bringing more. We just want to, we want presence into the community, and we believe the presence in the community means putting a post or putting a infrastructure where you could fix the police officers in the location and not increase the presence. The physical presence does not mean a post. It means that police officers are much more engaged in the communities, and I hope that we stop doing policing people and do people policing, where we are going to the public and actually serving the public, as opposed to they keep on coming to us.
Well, we're out of time, so we can't go on any further, because we have coming up next 10 questions with Andy Johnson at 10 a.m. Don't miss it. Always great interviews, always great topics by the veteran master journalist himself, Mr. Johnson. So as we close, I want to thank, of course, the callers for calling in. No comments today, but thanks, Ashraf, for joining me once again. Interesting times you live in, right? Never a dull moment. Sure. All right, folks. So we'll see you next week. Stay safe. Remember your leaders to the Republic and to each other. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. Enjoy. It should be great race tomorrow. I might see some of it. Hopefully, you will all be entertained. We will all be. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
WESN.
If these walls could talk,